Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us at From Chains to Change. I'm Consuela Sway Gaines,
I am Matthew Green here again.
and we're so excited to be with you guys once again. And today's show is going to be jam packed with some information that you all need because first up will be none other than the amazing Mr. Checo Yancey from Voters Organized to Educate, which is our sister organization, our C4 side of Vote.
Yes, I'm excited for y'all to see this conversation with Checo today. He always brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. And for those of you who do not know, during the legislative session, I think he is at the Capitol every single day. And I don't have any data on this, but I think he testifies every single day also because if he's in that building, he is making his voice heard. So we're super excited to have him on and to talk to him about everything that's happening.
Yeah, because it's a lot, y'all. It's a lot. And being that it's so much, we didn't want to overwhelm Checo and expect him to bring all the knowledge. We also invited his partner in crime, Mr. Ronald Marshall, who is our policy analyst here at Vote. And he was over at the Vote office. Instead of him driving 2 hours to Lafayette, we zoomed these folks in.
We did. But it's great because it gives us an opportunity to have these folks on, to talk to them and bring you voices, perspectives, and information that we would not otherwise be able to bring to you. So we're super excited because Ronald, we just got done talking with Ronald, and that segment is fantastic. Ronald always brings us something that's new and enlightening. And so I'm excited for y'all to see it coming up and to hear what he has to say.
Yes, and last but certainly not least, we also have Claude Michael Como of PJI, Promise of Justice Initiative, talking with us about the Jim Crow juries. So stay tuned, sit back and relax, and give us your undivided attention. Be right back. All right, and so we have Mr. Checo Yancey with us of Voters Organized to Educate. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Checo.
Thank you for inviting me and thank you for having me, Miss. I'm sorry, Honorable Sway. Now that you are elected official, honorable, but still my friend, I hope.
Most definitely, most definitely.
We're gonna find out, Chief.
No,
Now,
sometime,
Marcus over there being messy.
uh,
He over there being messy. So the reason we wanted you to come today, we know we're in the middle of the regular legislative session. And we just came out of a special crime session. And so we just wanted to hear some follow-up about what's going on in the regular session that probably didn't take place during the special crime session that people need to know about, and let folks know how they can get involved and what they need to do to try to prevent some of these things taking place moving forward.
we just come out of the crime session, and what I look at the crime session is, the 30 or 40 years of reform work that we've done with this crime special session. In 9 days, they actually took everything away, and we actually started brand new, almost back to 1956 or something like that. When coming back now with there's no parole or anything anymore, no such thing as parole. But to make it clear, those men and women that are already incarcerated, already in DOC facilities or sheriff facilities, if they've already been sentenced, this doesn't affect them. So, they're still actually doing parole and pardon board hearings. But anybody after August the 1st of this year will now no longer be eligible for parole. They can still receive their good time, but they won't be eligible for parole.
Wow, that now that's disheartening because we know a lot of people who may be pre-sentence. They're getting ready to go into incarceration. And so these people, whether they're nonviolent or violent offenses, will after August 1st of this year will have no parole eligibility.
Parole eligibility. In fact, the chairman of the ACJ, Representative Villio, she had been telling us for the last couple of years that she wants 85% of your senators to do it. And with the current legislature right now, with the less Democrats that we have on the committees, no matter what we're doing right now, there's not enough Democrats to balance the board. So right now the boards are 9-4, 8-5. Sometimes you have two Democrats on there. There's nobody to persuade. And the way we look at it is just my personal view is uh, they are sticking to their guns. They are well organized. They are well in doing what they want to do, and that is to lock people up, throw away the key with no redemption. And, I may have said this, we were sold this bill of good years ago that if you do good in prison, you take all the classes you're supposed to take and everything, then one day you'd be eligible for parole. Didn't mean that you was going to get out. But with Representative Video, all of that is gone now. So the only thing that a man or a woman can do, they're on the inside, they can earn good time. But if you do a simple, you know, rule infraction, you can lose your good time. So it's about locking people up and throwing away the key.
So Chico, so is the same uh procedure for good time? Did anything change with that? Like
Well,
like
good
the
time you
like
can
the
only earn up to 300. I think it's 320 days that you can actually earn on good time. Period. Okay, that's all you can earn on your sentence. So as the chairman said, and I laughed when she said it. She said, if you want to take classes, if you afford yourself that, then you can earn good time. But there's no such time as parole time anymore. Does that answer your question, Marcus?
Yes, that's
I mean, it's
wow.
disheartening and everything, but again, what it shows me is, and had people went out and voted, we may not have been in this situation. We may have had the balance. I think that we got kind of lost in having the balance that you could persuade someone to change their mind about a person that have done good and needed an opportunity to give them that opportunity. And remember this, for those that's watching this and want to know, having parole didn't mean that you're going to get out of prison automatically. It just gave you that carrot that if you do the right thing, you take the classes, you be good, you have no write-ups, then you are eligible to go before the board. Didn't mean that you was going to make it. It meant that you had some hope. Right now, to me, they have taken all of the hope out of men and women that's incarcerated.
So Chico, with that being said, I had just gotten word that someone that I know, a woman who has been serving a life sentence, she was just granted a pardon board hearing. And so what do you think that's going to look like moving forward for people going to the pardon board?
Uh, I've been watching some of the hearings for our people that's on this call or on this video. You can go to the website of the Louisiana Department of Corrections and you can actually watch the hearings. They've put several law enforcement people on the boards, and I have not seen any big change as of yet. I've seen them deny people. I've seen them grant a couple of people, but for those that's been in a while in life sentences, they're going to be highly hard scrutinized. They're going to be scrutinized to the bone, because I don't know what most folks know it. You got a sheriff on the board now. You got ex deputies, people like that that's on these boards now. That's going to be have no idea what's going on. None of the people that we had on the boards before are there. Although you still have one Renatza, she's still the chairman of the pardon board and everything. But when you look at it, you have very few people that understand what goes on inside of prison, how a man or a woman actually changes and become a better person. And that's what we're hoping that some of these people look at. But your person that you asked me about, she's going before pardon, right?
Yes, she's going to the pardon board.
Right. And just remember, on the pardon board now is the former sheriff of Caddo Parish, Prater. So I have not watched a pardon board here, and I've been watching parole boards here. But next time they have a pardon board, I would ask all of our people that we know go to the Louisiana Department of Correction website, and you can watch it, and we can get a chance to see. We don't have enough information now. These boards just started a couple of weeks ago, so they've not gotten into the rhythm of what we're looking for to get a stance on how they're going to vote, what you need to have. But I would hope that your person that's coming out, the lady, she has all I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and hopefully, some of us can be there to support that person. Let them know that see that men and women that got out of prison doing well and just asking for an opportunity. That's all.
Right, right. Um, and with that being said, with all of these laws being changed and the amount of time that people are going to be remaining in prison, to me, it seems like they're going to run out of room. From what I understand, they're already out of room. They don't have enough beds. Even here in Lafayette, where our parish prison is at capacity, where officers aren't even really allowed to arrest people unless there's some really, really serious charges. They're having to let people go because they don't have enough room. And I think that's something that's going to be taking place all over Louisiana. And then you have people who will not be able to make bond because their bonds are set so high. People who will be in prison for lengthier stays, and also a lot of these changes to parole. They're going to be funneling people back into the system for technical parole violations. So it's a lot that's going to take place. They're already talking about building a new jail here in Lafayette already. They had
Right.
stopped that conversation for a while, but it's come back up because of that very reason. They just don't have the capacity to have all of these people in the current jail. So they're talking about Opelousas has added they built another building, you know, with I want to say 200 beds already in Opelousas because they were at their capacity. So it's already starting where they're going to be building new facilities or places they're going to call as their overflow. It's already starting.
It started, and in fact, tomorrow on House Bill 733, Representative Bayham, he's putting a no bail on crime or violence and $50,000 on a minimum and on felonies and $10,000 on the lesser. So those bills are coming out, and whether people realize it or not, with this governor now and with the administrator of criminal justice, what they're doing is they're coming back now from the crime session and looping up everything to lock stuff in, because what's going to happen is there's going to be more jails built, there's going to be more prison built, and people have to understand what we did in 16 and 17 when we did the JRI. That's was to take people out and give people an opportunity to do that, because that is the how can I say, that's the dilemma we found ourselves in, because we were having more people in, and people needed an opportunity to have a release valve. Now, I think that they want to come back and fill up everything. And when I'm sharing this with folks, I remember it was 40,000 people in the system across the state when we started 16 and 17. And then as the years went on, it dropped down to 27,000. To me, that's 13,000 bodies that the sheriffs, these private prisons, they lost those 20 some dollars per day per body,
Right.
per body. This is, to me, it's about money. Although, yeah, crime is you know, it's a perfect storm right now for crime because of what's going on out here. But you have to give people an opportunity to understand that, you have to manage your anger. There's stuff that has to go on and everything. But if you take all of that away, and somebody say, I'm going to prison, and guess what? I ain't gonna get out no way. It's going to become dangerous for the correctional officers on the inside. Nobody's talking about the females that work inside the prison, the males that work inside the prison. If you take the hope away, you take that carrot away, that parole that if you do good, this may happen for you. Not guaranteed, but if you take that away, to me, you are lighting the fuse of dynamite inside the prison. And you have to understand that these small towns that have these small prisons and everything, they're going to make plenty, plenty money because there's no industry there. So it's the prison industry, it's the industrial prison complex. And that's what this is about. This is what this is about, that, hey, locking up everybody, it doesn't matter what's going on, no matter what you do, you cannot get out. If you get I'm going to give you a perfect example. 10 years, person get a 10-year sentence. They're going to do 8 years and 6 months. Now, if they get the good time, that may help them on the back end on the good time. But there's nothing else. There's no parole eligibility. There's no nothing. So anybody sentenced after August the 1st of this year, 2024, is going to do 85% of their time, period.
All right, and welcome back. We are with none other than Mr. Ronald Marshall, our policy analyst over at Voice of the Experience out there in New Orleans. If he's not in New Orleans, he's at the state capitol slaying, or at least attempting to slay, some serious dragons at the capitol. How you doing today, Ronald?
I'm okay, Sway. I'm okay. It's good to have y'all. Good to be on the show with y'all. I'm good.
It's always a pleasure to hear from you, because you are certainly an expert when it comes to the goings on with things at the legislative session. Now, we just came out of a crime session, right? A special crime session. Um, and now we are in the regular legislative session of this year. What is that looking like, Ronald? What are some of the things that you're seeing right now?
Well, it's basically a repeat from the crime session. When you speak about all the crime bills, they all look the same. If they're not harassing people, they're not tweaking penalties, increasing punishment. It's the laws that they're passing is making it easier for people to be incarcerated, and harder for people to get out of prison. As when it comes to immigration, Louisiana will normally be a sanctuary state. That's a bad look for those people who gave so much of their time, blood, sweat, and tears after Hurricane Katrina to rebuild Louisiana. Now you're just going to uproot them and send them back across the border because they are quote unquote undocumented immigrants. That's just pure cruel evilness to me. That's how I see it. Uh, but tomorrow we have our 99th jury date. We're still fighting for those men and women who've been incarcerated by an unconstitutional impounded jury. But it's a tough session, Sway. It's tough, but that's what we do. When it gets tougher, we get tougher. And no advocate civil rights leader, champion, has never accepted the easy way in. We've
Mm-hmm.
always championed adversity. That's why we become great. That's how we get stronger, by rushing in to the adversity, you know. But the session, I mean, they're stacked. I seen a picture yesterday online, and it was the Republican Party, and somebody made the comment, look at that diversity, speaking to it was just one group of people and not any other group of people. And that's what we're dealing with. Their lockstep formation, they voting as a block, and they're definitely rolling back all the progresses we made over the years. So it's a tough session, Sway. It's hard. It's really hard. And we accept that. We know that. But, you know, when we go to the Capitol, you know, we realize that we are going to be speaking to rocks, people whose spirit and hearts are hard. We know that. So we changed our strategy. Even though it looked like we're talking to them, we're actually just raising the conversation to everybody that's watching, everybody that's in earshot of this debate. You know, that's our strategy. That keeps us going. We have this imaginary audience in our head as if the whole world or the whole Louisiana is watching these debates. So we're just speaking to everybody rather than our elected officials. And that's how we keep going, Sway.
So, speaking of raising the conversation, because that's very important, that's part of this TV show is to raise the conversation. I remember hearing and reading after the crime session, there were a lot of things in the news and a lot of people talking online about how if you're going to incarcerate more people, which looks like the outcome of the crime session, you need to start providing more services. You need to start changing the conditions inside of prisons. You need to provide mental health services, right? Like a lot, educational services. And so I think part of elevating the conversation, I'm curious, have you at the Capitol seen any bills that are attempting to do that? Because that's an important part of this process too. And it's important to, if it's being left out, to talk about it being left out.
Well, for sure, Thursday, we're definitely going to test that theory, whether or not our legislative body is focused on improving the conditions of confinement of our people. We have what is called the Fairness and Safety Act for incarcerated workers that will be heard in ACJ Thursday. And that bill there is going to determine, or allow the public to see how cruel that body of people are, or if they have any compassion whatsoever. Because the only thing that bill is asking for that legislative body to do, just make it so that people who are working while incarcerated have the proper protective equipment. The Department of Corrections are taking measures to ensure their safety. They have proper training. Just recently, 3 weeks ago, a young man was slung to his death in Angola while at work. He was stacking locker boxes on top of a truck, jumped on the back of this big diesel flatbed truck. The driver makes a sharp turn. The young man comes off the back of it, and these iron steel locker boxes smashed on top of him, killed him instantly. That's just one out of many deaths. And this bill, the Fairness and Safety Act, asks our legislative body to put some safety measures in place for our people who's working in prison. It also asks our legislative body to place a cap on the amount of pay can be deducted from incarcerated workers at these transitional work programs. Right now, it's 75% of 481, whichever is less. And then there's another section saying they can take like 80% of 600, whichever less. These guys work week grueling hours, and after this department, this bucket reduces or deduct money out of $1,000 weekly check. That incarcerated person was subject to walk away with $83. Contrary to the goals of the TWP, Transitional Work Program. Transitional Work Program requires that to say that this is for rehabilitation. It's going to ensure that these guys have $1,000 upon it in their income for reentry. It's impossible for them guys to save that type of money if the transitional work programs are deducting almost 88% of their weekly checks. So we're
So then again,
definitely going to see whether or not our legislative body is all about improving the conditions and circumstances of confinement with the Fairness and Safety Act that will be heard in ACJ.
that right there is another another reason why we're going to see so much hopelessness, from the jails to the prisons, the so-called correctional facilities, all the way up until work release, and even while you're on supervised parole or probation, they're putting all these laws and rules into place that, if someone breathes too hard, they can find themselves right back in the system. And it looks to me like all the laws they're creating are for that reason, to keep people in and out, like a revolving door.
I was
That's
going to say
exactly
that,
what. Go ahead, Matthew.
yeah, I was gonna say, right, like it's astonishing to hear that even the rehabilitative programs are punitive, and they create. We hear so often from vote members and from other folks, allies, advocates, everybody. One of the hardest transitions is coming home and having the resources, finding housing, and to make it that little bit extra, that much harder, is truly astonishing.
Yeah, it just goes back to the theory that we discussed at the conference, right? Have our legislative bodies, do they bear that mark that influence the behavior practices of one group to tie another group of people to a tree and beat them? It takes a certain type of cruelty to do someone that every day. I'm talking about whip them until the backs of their skin is blue black. And even though we don't see that visible physical beatings, if you ever go into a committee and you hear people share their stories, highly emotional stories about why certain things need to change, and that legislative body does not ask them one question, does not say anything to them, that's the same cruelty that passed on the generations long time. It's just so subtle today, but the damage is still very much the same. The impact is still the same. And all you got to do is just pay attention. Because if somebody sits in front of me and share a heartbreaking story, I'm going to be moved in a way to show that empathy, right? But we don't get that empathetic response from our legislative bodies. Our testimonies, our emotions, our stories are always met with a cruel silence every single time. And it takes a very steward person to see it. And that's why I'm calling it out. Just because you don't see the whipping post, just because you don't see the dogs being leashed on other people, just because you don't see a black man hanging from a tree, that cruelty is alive and well today in our politics.
And we are back. And as promised, we have Claude Michael Como, who's from the Promise of Justice Initiative, better known as PJI. These guys are doing some amazing work, especially when it comes to the Jim Crow juries. And thank you so much, Claude Michael, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so could you tell our audience who you are and how you came about doing the work that you're doing, and what do you do over at PJI?
So I am a Louisiana, born in Bossier City, Louisiana, and I am a staff attorney here at PJI now. Um, I think I guess what brought me gravitated me to this work is that I just feel a responsibility to like fix a lot of the things I find broken about this state. And it's my home place. My parents are still in Bossier City. And even though I'm in New Orleans now, I feel like a real obligation to like fix some of these things because they affect our communities, you know, an awful lot. And it just feels like really, really important work, and that it's work that I feel really proud to be doing.
Awesome. And so I know there's been a lot of buzz, and I've been seeing the flyers and part of the organizing to get people to the Capitol around the Jim Crow jury, the non-unanimous jury. I can't believe we're actually still talking about this,
Right.
even after the U.S. Supreme Court gave a decision and that it was unconstitutional, and that they left it in the hands of Louisiana legislators to make it right. And so, why are we still here, and what's going on with these Jim Crow juries?
Yeah, so I mean, to answer the quick question on like, well, why are we still here? It seems like a lot of buck passing from all the institutions that could fix this. In the instance that they get it, but they choose to wait. So, so immediately from the jump, like these verdicts started happening, and after 1898, Louisiana decided that they were just going to start convicting more Black people, and they wanted to make sure that Black jurors couldn't get on a jury and mess that up for them. They felt that this would they I mean like what they called it was a less violent form of lynching. And the way that they described that is just like, if we could only just get these convictions going, we could put bodies in jails and not have to worry about these pesky uh hangings out for people. We won't have to subject the public to those views. We'll just put them in jail. And so, like this went on for a really long time. And whenever it hit the US Supreme Court, they said, this is really racist and this is unconstitutional. These are things that we already knew, but they decided that, like this was the time that they were going to make the correction, but they only fixed it prospectively. And so, whenever this issue hit the Louisiana Supreme Court, because, US Supreme Court says, well, Louisiana can figure out what they want to do with it. Louisiana Supreme Court also did the same thing. They basically said that they weren't going to do this, that it wasn't in their power to do this. It was up to the legislature to do this. And they passed the buck. They just said, hey, legislature, you figure this out. And in the meantime, we'll just say, well, they said that DAs can figure some of this out. They can give individualized relief, and they really haven't done any of that. And they've really, again, kind of passed the buck. They've just said, oh, we don't have, we're not going to do this. Like the law doesn't say we have to do this, so we're not going to. And so we're back again at the legislature, and we are now, this bill would be a full retroactivity bill. It would basically say that the US Supreme Court's decision in Ramos v. Louisiana, which said this was unconstitutional, it applies to all the people that have been convicted by non-unanimous juries in the past. And it basically, so everyone that has had one of these verdicts would be able to apply for post-conviction relief. They would be able to say, hey, I was convicted unconstitutionally. I deserve a new trial. And so it would give all the people that are currently incarcerated on these unconstitutional verdicts a shot at a fair trial.
And that's about 1,500 people, men and women.
That's right.
So that impacts a lot of people across the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not just the people that are incarcerated, it's like their family members, their loved ones that are all also impacted. They might lose a father, they might lose a spouse. I mean, they might just lose a friend. Like it's a lot of impact, and it's an economic impact on those families as well. Like prison is impossible almost to get through without the support of your family.
Right.
So incarcerating people that have no business being incarcerated is expensive, not just for Louisiana taxpayers and everything like that. It's expensive for their families. They are then impacted. They have to support someone that should not even be incarcerated, has never received any kind of real conviction.
So even and I'm gonna let Matt because I'm just curious about this. Do you know um if there's a huge majority of those 1,500 people who are on this Jim Crow jury who are claiming innocent and who have been claiming innocence from the very beginning?
Yeah, there's absolutely people that claim innocence that are that, the facts of the trial don't or the facts of the case don't really add up. They were not in the same city whenever this crime occurred. All kinds of different reasons like that. But and I think that's important. Like I do think it's important when people say that they're innocent that we give them a fair trial because that's the point, right? But it also is important even if a person is not claiming innocence, claiming that they did something else, that the charge didn't match their crime, are all also important in this because, you know, we presume innocence before being proven guilty, and that proof has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. All
Mm-hmm.
of these cases have never been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And every single one of these cases, at least one juror said that this person was not guilty of the crime that they were charged with. And so it's important that if we're going to say that someone needs to be incarcerated over one of these convictions, and it needs to be beyond a reasonable doubt. The state has just not met its burden in any of these cases. And so it's important that we give everyone here the shot at a fair trial.
Yeah, I think you raise a really important point there in that the burden on both sides is on the state in fixing this issue and improving beyond a reasonable doubt and making a case. All the burden is on the state in both instances in that way. I had a question because Ramos versus Louisiana and the Jim Crow juries, this has been going on for a few years now. It's not just brand new. It's not just that this is the first time that retroactivity has been brought before the legislature. What do you and do all of y'all at PJI see as the big hurdles for finally like getting this across the finish line? Because this has been it's been a few years that this has come before the legislature, and as you said, there's been kicking the can and passing the buck.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest obstacles is the district attorneys themselves. The District Attorneys Association constantly puts up a barrier and constantly pressures legislators to not pass legislation. And the reason for that is essentially because they think it's difficult. They think it's hard to go back and retry cases, and so they just don't want to do it. And I think that results in two things. It results in like either no legislation being passed or a lot of half measures being proposed. But like you have situations where legislators try to put up bills prove that there was a miscarriage of justice because of the non-unanimous jury verdict, which is a half measure, right? Because the miscarriage of justice is the fact that they were convicted with a non-unanimous verdict in the first place. That's the injustice and that's the miscarriage. And so like that is the area where they need to fix it. And then the Louisiana District Attorneys Association is essentially just saying it would be really convenient if we didn't have to do this because it would result in us having to do some extra work. But that isn't in a reason to allow injustice to go forward. Like being difficult is not a good reason. Um, Correcting injustice is sometimes hard, particularly whenever it has been going on for over a century. But that doesn't, like we have to do it. Like we can't deny people their constitutional rights just because it's sometimes very difficult to correct or a little bit difficult to correct. The level of difficulty is just irrelevant to fixing the problem.
It's amazing to me watching this happen as it's pretty unanimous. A lot of people said yes, these non-unanimous juries are awful. The history of how they originated is racist and written into black codes and all sorts of laws. But then it's just been no movement in actually fixing the problem, as you were saying. It's just awful to watch from the outside, I think.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and to think that they just want to say, "Oh, it's going to be too hard or it's going to be too," because there's probably a pretty high percentage of those 1,500 men and women who were found guilty on these non-unanimous juries who are actually innocent of what they are charged with. And so I think the DA's association are not really so much concerned about it being hard or it's an inconvenience or whatever. I think it's the fact that you're going to be exposed because you guys didn't do your job properly, that you either withheld some evidence or it was something that you did on your part that allowed someone to be convicted on false charges.
Right.
And this is going to expose them by having to bring them back, and whatever evidence they have is going to either have to be uh brought to the light again and re-examined to see exactly how did they come to that conclusion the first time.
Hmm.
And chances are, I believe Jason Williams out of Orleans Parish was probably the only district attorney in Louisiana who was willing to bring these cases back, review some of their cases and release them. And so he probably was the only DA in Louisiana. Am I correct?
Yeah, so there's been very limited movement from any other DA. New Orleans one has one of the most cases, one of the highest number of cases, I guess, in relation to non-unanimous verdicts than many of the other parishes. There's like really a big like Orleans Parish, Caddo Parish, Jefferson Parish have like the highest numbers. I think East Baton Rouge is in that list as well. And so like those are the big center hubs, but a lot of these other parishes have very little,
And we
very
have some right here in Lafayette
right.
too.
Of course, yeah. And so it feels like there have been maybe a couple of the DAs that were like, "Oh, I'll resolve some of these, like, but there hasn't been any movement like Orleans where they have actually actively announced, like, hey, we're going to review every single one of these cases and we're going to try to find a resolution here. Because, all the other parishes just haven't been willing to do it. And then after the Supreme Court invalidated 930.10, which was the statute that at least formalized the procedure where DAs could come to agreements with defense counsel and bring it to a judge. They have been really unwilling to touch anything. They're like, the idea is that like we can't do this at all. We can't our hands are tied, like we can't actually resolve these cases, which is not true, but they will hide
So
behind.
930.10 is still in law, right? It's
So,
still a law.
so
Or did they?
930.10 is unconstitutional in a way that you cannot say I'm coming to an agreement because of 930.10. But the Supreme Court in that case very explicitly, like not even subtext, said, but look, we're not really changing much here. You can still come to an agreement with, a person. Say they file a post-conviction relief application and you feel like you don't want to have a procedural bar there, you can waive those procedural bars. You can bring that forward. You can come to agreements. But this legislation, and so nothing really changed there, but DAs were still willing to do this. And then this legislative, the special session particularly, has been very damaging to this process in general, because it is made it a real intention to strip discretion, this strip like waiving bars or anything like that from the statutes, and make sure that it makes it very difficult for anybody to make kind of agreement. So you know, it's important that we give this resolution, like this bill, the SB 83 bill, like into law, because otherwise, and come August, you're not going to have those opportunities to make agreements or anything like that, even if the DAs were willing. And so it's really important that we put this into law so that the people that are suffering under these unconstitutional verdicts can actually get relief.
Yeah. It's I think it's oftentimes for folks in the general public who don't do advocacy work or aren't lawyers in the legal system, um, to hear that too many times justice is optional within the legal system, it seems. In that, right, like it should be at the core of everything that's happening. So thinking about the folks who are out there who want to get involved, what are some of the ways that people can get involved and help and advocate and help out with the issues of Jim Crow juries?
Well, there's a lobby day tomorrow, so if you're in the area of the Capitol, or even if you're not, you can. There are buses coming out of New Orleans. There's some buses coming out of Lake Charles, I believe Lafayette and Shreveport. And so if you're in any of those areas, you can take the bus down to New Orleans. You could join us on the Capitol, and at the Capitol, to really fight for fight these and tell our senators and the representatives to pass this into law. And so that would be the quickest way, I think. But like we're always going to be advocating for people, and like these DAs need to hear that we are going to be fighting them on this issue. The legislators need to know that we're fighting on this. These judges need to know that we're going to be fighting for the issue. So it's important that we make our voices heard in all those spaces. And so, we, come to lobby day, but also connect with us. We would love to connect with you and try to get, connected to people that need to hear from you, like need to hear that it's not just a bunch of lawyers in New Orleans that are fighting for this. It's everyone fighting for their loved ones and fighting for the people, like just for the rule of law, like justice to be done.
So how can people get in contact with you guys over at PJI? If they want to get involved, and you give some contact information so they
Yeah,
can
sure.
reach out.
So our office number is 504-529-5955. You could also contact um several emails. I'll give you a whole bunch. But my email is ccomo@defendla.org. We also have an info page at info at defendla.org. But we also have, if you go to our website, which is just promiseofjustice.org, we have places where you can sign up for a newsletter and get contacted on that. And and basically stay up to date on what we're working on and what we're doing.
And all the social medias. I know y'all are on there because I follow you.
Yes, definitely. Our Instagram is justice's at justice's promise. We have a Twitter, but I don't know it, I don't think. But the Instagram will lead you there. I promise.
Absolutely.
Right, right. Well, thank you so very much. And you guys are doing a great job. Just keep up the good work. And we will see you tomorrow at the Capitol.
Look forward to
Looking
meeting you in
forward to
person.
it.
Yes,
Thank you for
yes. Thank
having me.
you so much.
All right.
Y'all take it easy. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Woo. Now that was some powerful information that I know all of you could use. And thank you for staying in and listen to Checo and Ronald and Claude with this. Whew, it was a lot.
I love bringing all of these voices to our program and,
Yes.
getting to have these conversations with folks.
Yes.
It is probably one of the best parts of creating this show is being able to bring these folks in and bringing these conversations to light and spreading the information, because those are three really important conversations we had today.
Definitely. And so to keep the conversations rolling, I want to just give you a little teaser of what's to come on our next show. So you make sure that you tune in to our next show where we will have our incredible city court judge, Mr. Jules Edwards, who will be talking about the warrant recall that's going to be taking place here in Lafayette. He and our wonderful city marshal, Reggie Thomas, will be sharing information about the warrant recall that we are partnering with them with to get some of these warrants lifted off of people and get them on their way with their lives, so they're not having to look over their shoulders and wondering if somebody's coming to arrest them for a warrant for missing court.
Yep.
So that's going to be an amazing show that you don't want to miss. We're also going to have some financial literacy provided to you by Miss Crystal Chavez,
Who's a vote member.
who is a vote member, and she works at the bank, so she knows her numbers.
She knows her numbers,
She
but it's going to
knows
be
her
exciting.
numbers.
So, as always, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
And always remember, no surrender.
No retreat.